Finally, the bankers had control over America's money, but that's not all. That same year the Federal Reserve Act was passed, Congress also passed income tax legislation for the first time, which would enable the government to tax people's labor in order to pay the interest on the money it would now have to borrow from the Fed. And it wouldn't be long before America would start borrowing like never before to pay for its involvement in a war. Arguably, not a single war in modern history has been fought for the reasons advertised. Most people think the First World War started over the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. This did provide an excuse, but the truth of the matter is, cars, planes, and diesel engines for locomotives and ships had been invented, all which ran on oil. The demand for this resource was about to explode, and the Rockefellers, with their Standard Oil monopoly in the U.S., and the Rothschilds, with their control of the Royal Dutch Shell Company across the Atlantic, had the market practically cornered. Then in 1908, oil was discovered in Persia. Much of the Middle East at that time was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, who, in partnership with Germany, were in the process of building a railroad to Baghdad. This had to be stopped. It was time to kick the Turks out of the Middle East.
And this bold stating of the geopolitical facts of life strikes the modern reader with the force of revelation. For there is in our own time an absolute taboo among the corporate news media and the political class against mentioning anything to do with these strategic and economic reasons for war. How curious, for example, that the First World War is never taught in our schools as an invasion of Iraq. Not all of you are coming with me on that one. That's okay, don't worry. I will say many things in the course of tonight's show that you will not agree with. But I feel that if we retrench back to a position of consensus, we can build outwards from there. So going back to where I believe some consensus to exist between us. Possibly. I am sure many of you, like me, have never been entirely satisfied with the standard explanation we were given at secondary school for the causes and origins of the First World War. The assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. I mean, no one is that popular. A somewhat more efficient cause might be the Berlin-Baghdad Railway. Commenced construction in the years leading up to the First World War. The Royal Navy had just switched from coal to oil. German Navy follows suit, but they don't have no oil-producing colonies. Thus begins Drang nach Osten, the drive to the east, spine of which policy is the Berlin-Baghdad Railway. Now, there's already track laid from Berlin to Constantinople. Of course, it's called the Orient Express. The Germans just have to build the last 900 clips. It's going to take them clear into Baghdad, but there is huge opposition to this project among the major European powers. And the British, we're opposed to this for two main reasons. Firstly, we recognize that we cannot compete with the Germans in engineering terms alone, because we know that passengers will simply not accept the Sarajevo to Basra replacement bus service. Secondly, we know once this is built, ain't nothing to stop a Munich businessman getting out of the Baghdad terminus with a Deutsche Bank checkbook, smashing our cartel. So a phony war begins. The first British regiment to be deployed in the First World War, the Dorset Regiment, goes to Basra, 1914, where it is joined by 51 other British divisions.
Ah, what a difference 100 years makes. Not. Getting the European powers embroiled in a war was one thing. Getting the U.S. involved was something else. Americans wanted nothing to do with the war. That is, until the Lusitania, with 196 American passengers on board, was sunk off the coast of Ireland by a German U-boat. Evidence which indicates that the passengers of the Lusitania were sacrificed to spark U.S. entry into World War I, while regarded as the stuff of conspiracy theories, is well documented. The British use of merchant ships to ram German submarines had rendered civilian vessels fair game in the eyes of the Germans. This was well known, Yet the Lusitania sailed into hostile waters without a military escort. One of the ship's boilers had been shut down, reducing its speed and making it an easy target. Despite claims to the contrary, the Lusitania was carrying munitions, which were listed on the ship's manifest. Germany took out an ad in a few dozen American newspapers, warning that ships flying the flag of Britain or her allies would be attacked, ads which the U.S. government tried to stop papers from printing. Wilson's advisor, Colonel Howe, spoke with the British Foreign Secretary, Sir Edward Grey, about the Lusitania the morning of the day it was attacked, recording in his journal that its sinking would carry us into the war. He was right, it did. War's effectiveness at pushing nations into debt can easily be seen on this tally provided by the Treasury Department. The country's debt jumped 900% between the years preceding and following the war. It ballooned more than sixfold again as the country entered World War II. But apart from the purely economic reasons for getting America involved in these wars, on another level there was something else going on.